Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to head up towards Gothenburg once again. Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. We've got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in when we're reviewing a Gothenburg beer. Bit of a tradition on the channel these days. And for this one we're going to return to a brewery that you've seen me review many things from before, and this is the latest instalment from one of my favourite series of beer that they do. So for this one then we are going to return to OO Brewing, and today we are having a look at the 50/50 Citra Ekuanot. So this one comes in as always at 6.5% ABV and it's a New England IPA, and like I've told you before, the 50/50 beers are their dual hopped New England IPA series that they do. This beer was released on the 1st of November 2020 as part of the Lokalos Småskalig assortment for that month, and they released two other beers this month. You've already seen me review the 100 Amarillo, which I really enjoyed because I'm a big sucker for the big orangey leaning hops. They released this one, and they did of course release the, I think it was called the Scarlet Rye, which is a rye IPA. So I have to say I'm very curious to see how that one turns out, and you will see that one released a little bit later on in the month actually. But yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. This is, I think, the 11th beer in the 50/50 series that we've reviewed from them now, because they release a new one every month, or maybe the 10th, because I think the first month they released the 100 Citra. But yeah, this one I think should be very interesting. Citra, as we know, lovely big tropical hop, that mainly mangoes, but a lot of other little tropical fruit complexities in there. American hop coming in about 14% alpha acid, lovely stuff. And the Ekuanot we know as being, yeah, about 13-14% alpha acid as well, released a little bit later, and it usually gives you a lovely big kind of limey character as well. So I'm really curious to see how this one turns out. Both of these hops I'm very familiar with, and I think this should make for a very interesting beer. Two really well-known hops and well-respected hops, I have to say. So yeah, I really enjoy this 50/50 series because it's a great opportunity to learn a little bit more about hops and how they work together. As I say, this time we've got hops that we know quite well. The 100 series, which is their single hop series, is always really good as well. And as I've said in previous videos, I would love to see them do, like, you know, West Coast and black IPAs in these releases as well. Do a 3-pack. I think that could be a really interesting release for them each month. But obviously, you know, it would be quite a little bit of work for them, that. But yeah, definitely check out this 50/50 series from OO if you get the chance, and I would recommend that you try the 100 beers as well. These guys are a very solid brewery, and one that I would always recommend if you're particularly interested in Swedish beer. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from OO Brewing before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the fairly near future. There's lots of beers reviewed from the 50/50 series, as well as I think 3 from the 100 series and various other things. But there's all the usual social media down there too. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about OO Brewing then, on to my brewery notes. So as I've mentioned to you already, OO Brewing are based in Gothenburg on the west coast of Sweden, and the company was founded back in 2011 by Olaf and Ollie Anderson, who are childhood friends. For many years they were also avid home brewers, and this continued as they got older and older, of course, and it just intensified really. But the pair have always been very interested in beers, and Ole apparently was heavily involved in the Gothenburg beer scene since pre-drinking age. As I've told you, Gothenburg is pretty much the craft beer capital of Sweden, but he was the original head brewer at Stigbergets Brewery, and this is where the original OO beers were produced. So they operated basically as a kind of contractor gypsy brewery, if you like, in the early days. But yeah, Ole has a very, very good pedigree as a brewer. But while Ole takes care of the brewing side of things, Olaf manages the business side of the brewery. For a period of time he was working in Copenhagen, but I believe now he's located in Gothenburg, or relocated to Gothenburg, and so both of them are involved 100% at the brewery. But they just make beers that they enjoy drinking themselves, and you know that happens to be a lot of IPAs and things like that. But in April of 2017, Ole left Stig Bergets Bryggeri and invested his time fully in OO Brewing, and the company invested in their own brewery in the Hisingen area close to the Tingstedt Bridge. And this is equipped with a 2,000 litre brewing system, which means they have the capacity to brew up to 500,000 litres of beer per year. In the first year they produced around 100,000 litres, and they are kind of going through an expansion plan to build that up to capacity over the years. And last year in 2019 they produced around 300,000 litres. I'm not sure if they are going to be able to grow that this year, but yeah, as I say, they are kind of just gradually working on an expansion plan. As of November 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 70 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and as I said, through Systembolaget you will get a new release from these guys, at least one every month. Usually there's a 50-50, sometimes there's a 100 series as well, and then you might often get quite a random one too. My favourite beers that I've had from these guys, I always talk about these, the Muscles and the Evergreen IPA. Those are very, very nice. I've not seen those in a while actually, but in fairness I've not checked Systembolaget to see. They've always got the Arctos and the Long Boil, the Arctos Imperial Stout and the Long Boil Barley Wine, which are released in the winter. I would recommend that you try those, but they're also very good when it comes to lager beers as well. There's the Ectopils and various other things that they've released. So yeah, these guys really know what they're doing when it comes to the lager beers, and they're not scared to try different styles either actually, and when they do try it, it tends to work out really quite nicely in my opinion. So yeah, as I say, a brewery that I would always recommend if you are interested in Swedish beer, and probably the cult classic beer from these guys would be the Narangi, and recently we reviewed the double Narangi, which I have to say was really, really nice. So yeah, I think it was Charismatico as well, if I remember rightly, was a very, very good one as well, and I hope I'm not mixing that up with Stig Bergets, because I've done that in the past. But yeah, those are probably the two best beers I've had from OO over the last little while. These ones are very solid, but I would say these are definitely more for kind of educational purposes rather than anything else. If you really want to try one of the classic OO beers, Narangi is where it's at. Lovely, lovely beer, that one. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about OO Brewing for the moment. I really enjoy reviewing their beers. If you want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website in the description below. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and have a taste of this beer then. So as I've told you in previous 50/50 reviews, each hop does have a kind of colour code, and yellow in this case is Citra, and the sort of burgundy maroon kind of colour is Ekuanot. We've seen this from their previous beers. Like I say, the very first beer they released in the Lokalis Moskalugd assortment was the 100 Citra, which was very nice, and I believe, I can't remember if it was the same month or the month after that they started releasing the 50/50s, but yeah, you will at least get you'll either get a 50/50 or a 100. The 50/50s are a little bit more common. You'll get these every month through the Systembolaget local releases, but you can see on the back there is the kind of standard OO Brewing data part of the beer. OO Brewing 50/50 Citra Ekuanot 6.5% New England IPA, this one. As I say, I absolutely love this series. Citra is one of the original 3 or maybe 4 high alpha acid American hops, you know, and I would always say Citra, Simcoe and Amarillo, and I guess, you know, Centennial was around at that time roughly, along with, you know, Columbus and things. But yeah, Citra, lovely mangoey flavours, lots of little tropical fruit complexities, gooseberries, lemon, lime, sometimes a little bit of lychee and stuff, whereas Ekuanot, we know, is a little bit more kind of straight up in its big limey characters. So yeah, definitely I think this will be an interesting mix, and I've probably had this a few times in a couple of other beers that we've had, but nevertheless always cool to try these kind of dual hop beers. This one of course is a 440ml can. I think I paid like 50 or 55 Swedish kroners for this one, maybe I think probably 50, so that is roughly around £4, yeah, like £4.25, somewhere between £4.25 and £4.50. So yeah, about €4.50, maybe about $5 for this can. So not bad, not bad for a locally produced IPA or a Swedish produced IPA. This is really nice. But yeah, you can see on the back there is the OO Brewing symbol for Olaf and Ole. And yeah, I guess we can get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Curious to see what this one has in store for us. So let's get it out and get on with this tasting then. I think this one will be really nice. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Yeah, we've got about 3/4 of it in the glass just now, and of course we will get the last of it in there a little bit later on. So yes, as you can see and as you would expect from a New England Hazy IPA, this one is poured a lovely kind of bright yellow colour. It actually looks very much like a kind of mango juice, but it does have a wee bit of a kind of more orangey tint to it, so I do wonder if there's a little bit of a kind of sweetening Caramunic or caramel, or a little bit of Pilsner malt, or, you know, Carapils, something like that, a little bit of a more brown sugary leaning malt. But it certainly looks like a lovely beer. I have to say, I think this is one of the hazier ones that I've come across in this 50/50 series, or in the 100 series actually. The level of haze on that is pretty impressive, and a little bit more. A little bit kind of stronger, if you like, a little bit higher than some of the other OO beers that I remember, certainly. But yeah, you can see this beer is poured with somewhere between a half and a 2/3 finger of a frothy white head. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and there's quite a few little ones just going up towards the bottom of the head there. The head there in this one looks very good, and in terms of colour, I would say it's a perfect white head on this one. Not really a creamy tint to it, more of a perfect white sort of thing. But yeah, it looks very, very nice, this one. And yeah, nothing particularly surprising from it when you consider that it is a New England IPA. If I stick my fingers behind the glass there, you can see the level of haze. That is pretty impressive. Not much light penetrating this one, I have to say, which is impressive for a 6.5%. Or as we always say, as you go up the alcohol scale with these beers, more oats, more wheat leads to more haziness usually. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma of this one then and see how we get on. Ooh, that does smell really nice actually. It smells very familiar, you know, if you know these hops. There's not much that's overly surprising with this beer in terms of its aroma, but it is really nice. So yeah, for me, on the malty side of things, I get quite a lot of a kind of soft white bready note out of this one. I think they do tinker with the malt base in these beers a little bit to suit the different hops that they have. So yeah, for me this one comes across as really soft and white bready, if you like. That's the first thing I'm noticing about this. Some of them can be a little bit more bitey and wheaty, some of them can come across a little bit more creamy and oaty, but for me, in the malt base here, it does come across as really nice and like a soft white bread kind of thing. If you take the aroma in a little bit more deeply, of course, you are going to get a little bit of that more wheaty, bitey kind of thing out of it. But it's quite minimal actually, that, in a sense. I don't get so much of the wheaty bitiness out of this beer, but there's also some really nice kind of oaty. There is a little bit of that oaty creaminess in there, and I do in fairness get a little bit of the kind of Werther's original butter candy thing that I'm noticing is becoming a little bit more prominent in the Scandinavian New England IPAs. It does have a little bit of that, but it does in fairness have a wee bit of a more kind of crisp McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing out of it as well. But yeah, on the malt base though, I would say this one does have that nice soft white bready character to it. I think that's the main component of it, yeah. But a little bit of wheaty bitiness, a little bit of oaty creaminess, some of that butter candy, and just a little bit of a... I do get quite a bit of sweetness out of the malt base in this as well. The more that I smell this beer, the more I get that McVitie's digestive biscuity quality out of it, and I do have to say I like how that goes together. Yeah, that's really nice. On the floral side of things then, or on the hoppy side of things then, I've got, that's me kind of preempting it, but yeah, I do get quite a nice little bit of a bright floral aromaticity out of this one. I hesitate to say spicy, I don't really find this one overly spicy. What you have to remember about these big high alpha acid hops is that if you add them earlier in the boil, you're going to get a lot more kind of bitterness and floral aromaticity and everything out of them. They're really, really nice, and they're really, really nice in that sense. But yeah, for me, tiny little bit of earthiness on the nose there, but really it's a big floral aromatic note to it. It does almost have a little bit of zestiness, and you do get more of a grassy note on the front of the nose, and I think the grassiness has even more zest in it. But remember, as you go through the length of the boil, usually an IPA is about a 90-minute boil. Some of them can be a little bit less. I'm not 100% sure in the New England case. But as you go through the boil, if you add the hops very early on, it's going to contribute wholly to the bitterness. But as you get later and later in the boil, adding the hops, there's a bit of a trade-off between bitterness and kind of flavour and aroma profile. So yeah, these beers are good because they do show you the bitter properties of each hop, but they also show you the big kind of the kind of flavour and aroma profiles too. That's what I really like about these, because you'll discover things like Simcoe has a big kind of spiciness to it as well. Nelson Sauvigne's got a big spiciness to it also. So yeah, that's one of the great things about the kind of single hopped and dual hopped series beers from OO Brewing. But yeah, lovely big floral aromaticity out of this one, quite a zesty grassiness, and I think probably the zestiness from the grass is coming more from the Ekuanot, I would say, but I think the aromaticity is probably coming from both hops. I think probably the aromaticity is coming from both of the hops in this beer. But yeah, let's focus on the fruity side of things then. Let's look at that, because we've talked about the green side of the beer, but quite floral and aromatic leaning, I would say, on the green side of things. But yeah, the fruits are very, very nice in this. And remember, in New England IPAs, the fruits are going to come across as quite smooth and quite juicy and things. If you put them in a West Coast IPA, they will come across maybe a little bit more pungent and a little bit more oily. But straight away with this one, you get that lovely juicy mango note from the Citra. You can smell the more oily lime, which is the Ekuanot. You smell those two components straight away, but you can see in the sort of antagonistic relationship that they have, there's a few little complexities coming out in there. So definitely nice big, if you take the aroma in deeply, you might get a little hint of passion fruit, which is another complexity you can get from Citra. But yeah, lovely big juicy mangoes. You will get a few kind of softer apricot-y, kind of papaya type notes in this beer as well, those softer tropical fruits. And you also get a little bit of a kind of gooseberry note out of this one as well. That's all the Citra. The Ekuanot is a big, it's that big oily limey note, and you can get that right at the front of the nose. But you also get some of the zestiness in there as well, and that's the Ekuanot as well. The zesty, grassy notes you get out of this beer, I think, are mainly the Ekuanot. But I mean, this is one of those beers where I know these hops. I know these hops very, very well, and it's given me everything that I would expect of them, to be honest. It is giving me everything that I would expect of these hops. So yeah, I really like that about this one. So you've got that nice oily citrusy note in there, and you've got those softer, juicy tropical notes as well. It's a really nicely done. Beer, this one, in terms of its aroma. So big thumbs up to OO Brewing on the aroma with this one for me. So yeah, let's have a little taste of this one then and see how we get on. I'm very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. So yeah, this one is the 50/50 Citra Ekuanot from OO Brewing up in Gothenburg on the west coast of Sweden. A 6.5% New England IPA with 2 American hops that we know pretty well. So yeah, let's get stuck into this one, guys. Slanja, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's really, really nice. In terms of the impact of this one, the thing you get straight away with this beer, this one strikes me as being more, it just feels a little bit more oily, I think, than some of the other ones that I've had. And again, you get that kind of bready note there. I think this one really comes across as quite similar in the flavour profile to how it comes across in the aroma. But yeah, compared to some of the other 50/50s that I've had, I do find this one more leaning, the malty side of the beer, leaning towards that soft, white bready side of things. And I really like that about it, I have to say. Yeah, definitely it comes across as a little bit more old school, to be honest with you, and I think I'm surprised there's not a wee bit more of that kind of butter candy thing in the middle of the palate, but yeah, it strikes me as being a little bit more old school, this. I mean, if you think about the Narangi and the Amazing Haze and the New Sweden IPA and stuff like this, if you compare those to some of the things that are being released just now from these breweries, they're definitely kind of more thicker and more kind of sweet, brown, sugary butter candy leaning. This one is a proper, this is definitely more of an old school beer, this. And like I say, they tinker with these malt bases to suit the different hops that they've got. So this one is quite old school. But these hops have been around for quite a wee while, actually. So that kind of makes sense that they would do that, to be honest. But yeah, really nice beer, this one. Thumbs up to to OO Brewing. I mean, if we compare this to some of the other IPAs and stuff that they've done, is this the craziest one that they've done? No, but it's really, again, it's very, very solid, and that's what you get out of these beers. For me, I always treat these as quite educational, I have to say. That's why I love this series of beer. It gives us a chance to just focus on the hops a little bit. So yeah, on that note, let's talk about the malty side of the beer then. So, as I was saying earlier, and as I usually say with these beers, straight off, the middle of your palate is just blanketed with that lovely kind of pale malty, white bready thing there. You can feel a little bit of the crispness of the pale malt in this one. That forms the kind of base layer of the beer. In the middle third of your palate, you do get that soft, thicker, white bready note there, and you can feel that, as I say, just form the pale malt and the slightly kind of thicker white bready sort of thing. That just forms the backbone of the beer. If you go onto that back third of your tongue, you can pick out, there is a little bit more of a kind of bitey, wheaty character out of this one, particularly towards the back of the palate, and you can feel the breadiness just thickens up a wee bit as well. But as you move further forward, and that front third of your tongue, you can feel that it just gets a little bit more, you can just feel that the kind of breadiness just smoothens out a little bit, and you do get some really nice kind of you do get a bit of just a brown sugary sweetness in there. I mean, if you move into that middle third of your palate, you can feel the thickness of the bread drops away, and then in that middle third of your palate, you've got just a light more kind of, just that soft, that more soft white bready character. But then in the very centre of your tongue, you do get a wee bit of a kind of brown sugary element pushing its way out of this one. So let's just look at that. So yeah, in the middle of the palate then, I'd actually say this one, it does have a wee bit of that kind of butter candy thing underneath, but I get a little bit more of a kind of almost straight up sweet caramel in the very centre of the palate. So if you go from the top down, sweet caramel, then it spreads out a little bit, and then it's a bit more kind of butter candy, and then you almost get like a bit of you do get the kind of more oaty creamy layer sitting in there as well. And then as you move towards the front of that middle third of your palate, you can feel that slightly thicker oatiness there, but underneath you do get that lovely soft white bready note out of this beer. So I really like how this one goes together, how the malt base in this beer goes together. It definitely strikes me as more bready and things compared to some of the other beers that we've had, both in the 100 and in the 50/50 series. So yeah, it gets a thumbs up from me, this one. I like how it goes together. On the hoppy side of things then, let's focus on that, because that of course is what the 50/50 series of beer is all about. So yeah, the green side of the hops in this one is a little bit more pungent than the aroma would have you believe. So yeah, let's look at that. So yeah, back corners of the palate, you do get a nice little bit of earthiness out of this one. As you move further forward along the side of the palate, there's a nice little bit of a kind of floral aromaticity out of this one. It does kind of build up quite a bit. There's quite a sharpness of transition there. The earthiness, there is a wee bit of strength to the earthiness there, but then very quickly it actually gets quite spicy, and I wasn't expecting that level of spiciness out of this beer on the floral aromaticity. But again, this kind of goes to show you, I've got a feeling that maybe that's the Ekuanot. I don't remember Citra being quite as spicy as that, and it's obviously not as spicy as you're going to get from like Columbus or whatever, but yeah, it does really have a bit of spiciness to it. But then yeah, as you go further into the aftertaste, you start to get a little bit more of that floral aromatic side of the beer, and then around the very front curve of the tongue, the beer is most definitely more lighter and grassy, but you do get quite a bit of zestiness on that grassy part of the beer as well. But I'm sure we'll come back to that as well when we talk about the fruits from these hops. So yeah. So yeah, as I always say, the fruity side of the beer will come out on that front third of your palate. You get that nice oily bubble where the fruity juicy esters just push their way out of the beer. If you go to that border area between the middle third of your palate and the front third of your palate, there is a wee bit of that kind of, there's a bit of a kind of grainy dryness in there, which is quite interesting. But yeah, as you get on that bit, you do get a wee bit of a strong grapefruity note, and that's kind of amplified a little bit by those grainy notes I was talking about. As you move a little bit further forward, it becomes a wee bit lighter and passion fruity, but then quite suddenly it becomes more kind of soft and mango-like. That is your yeah, that is your Citra all the way there. And then again, as you move further forward on the front third of your tongue again, you start to get those softer, kind of apricot papaya complexities that you're going to get from Citra. But as you reach the front half of that front third of your tongue, it's actually, the citrusy notes on this one are really quite pungent actually. I didn't expect that from this one, to be honest with you. I thought it would be, I didn't expect it to be quite as zesty and pungent as it is in terms of the kind of citrusy, the sort of citrusy side of things, because normally Ekuanot and Mosaic is a really nice mix because it brings out the more juicy, almost juicy side of the lime. But yeah, the Ekuanot that's in here is definitely giving a bit of that kind of darker, more pungent citrus for me. And it's kind of interesting because when the liquid is on your tongue, you do get the kind of sweeter side of the lime almost, and then it develops a bit of sweetness as you go further into the aftertaste, but then it really develops a bit of that really pungenty, that really kind of pungent note. So it's kind of interesting how this beer evolves. So definitely on that front half of the front third of your tongue, you do get the more oily, limey note out of the beer. It starts off sweet, like I say, then it gets a bit more kind of juicy, and then you start to get those darker, more kind of pungenty notes out of it. So I think this is really interesting, this one. The way those fruity characters go together is really quite quirky in this one. That's a side of Ekuanot that I've never seen, and as I was saying earlier, this is why I really like reviewing these 50/50 beers for you, because it really lets you see sides of these hops that you've never seen. I would always associate Ekuanot with being big and oily, but it really lets you see that slightly more pungent side to the beer as well. The other thing that we have to consider there is that Citra does have a little bit of its own lemon-limey character, so it could be that's driving this side of the beer. Maybe if you've got another hop in there like Mosaic, because I'm sure I've had quite a few beers where it's like Citra, Mosaic, Ekuanot. I think the Ekuanot, with that more oily presence that it has, really drives the sweeter side of Ekuanot. And you've got all these different antagonistic relationships. The yeast can affect things as well. There's so much kind of going on in these with these different hops and malt bases and stuff like this. That's why, as I say, that's why I really enjoy reviewing these beers for you here. So yeah, that's the kind of surprising thing about this one for me, is just that slightly more pungent, limey character. So yeah, you always learn something from these. You really do always learn something from the 50/50 series and the 100s as well. So yeah, quite a nice beer, this one. Definitely more kind of spicy than I expected. I would guess that's the Ekuanot, because we have had the 100 Citra, and I don't remember it being this spicy, so I think that's the Ekuanot here. But yeah, we've had various other 50/50s with Citra in it as well. But yeah, this is really nice, and I think, in fairness, the more that you drink of this beer, I think the Ekuanot notes do get a little bit more oily, a little bit more sweet, but I do get a certain kind of pungency on that kind of front third of your tongue, and it could well be, I think the grapefruity and passion fruity notes at the back of the front third of the palate are also playing a role there as well. But then you do get the big zestiness, that big sort of pungent zestiness on the very front tip of your tongue too. So that's a really interesting aspect of what I suspect is Ekuanot that I hadn't seen before. So yeah, I do like this one. I do feel a few little gooseberry type flavours coming off the tip of the tongue too, which again is some of the complexities you can get from Citra. I really like how this goes together, to be honest with you. So thumbs up to OO Brewing for this one. Again, the question would be, is this the craziest and best IPA that they've done? I don't think so, but again, it's educational, and it's really, for me, I find these things really interesting. So I hope you guys watching do as well. So yeah, on the pardon me, on the mouthfeel side of things then, what are we going to say about this? I find this beer a little bit oily, I really do. It's definitely kind of mid-bodied, maybe towards the top end of mid-bodied a little bit. The carbonation's very smooth in this one. As I say, for the New England style, for me, I find this one a little bit more oily, almost a little bit slick as well. In terms of bitterness, what are we going to say about this one? I do wonder if this beer has a little bit more IBU in it, maybe about 40 or something, maybe even a little touch more towards 50. because it really does have quite a nice wee bit of spicy character to it. So this one, it could be a little bit higher in its IBUs, in fairness. You do really get that on the side of the tongue there, so maybe 50 IBUs for this beer, which I do think this is a little bit more bitter than some of the other ones we've had recently. The malt base, like I said, is really quite smooth. You get a few kind of grainy aspects out of it the further you go into the aftertaste, but a nice kind of soft white bready note for me. A few little aspects of sweetness in the beginning as well, but yeah, a little bit more grainy. But the soft white, as you go further into the aftertaste, but the soft white bready note lingers there too. Little sweet caramel in the middle, the palate, as I said earlier, so it does have a wee bit of balance to it, but I think it really leans towards that softer white bready sort of thing. And the fruits for me, quite juicy. They do develop a little bit of an oiliness later on, but you've got quite a pungent tropical fruit note in there, and that's matched up with a kind of pungent citrusy quality to this beer as well. So yeah, I find this one really quite interesting actually. So take a little bit of time with this beer and just see how the flavour develops. I think this one shows you some really interesting sides to both of these hops, and the relationship between these two is really quite interesting. This is a very common relationship. This is a very common blend of hops that you'll find in various different beers. As I say, Citra Ekuanot, I've seen in quite a few different things, and it works very well. So yeah, just try this beer for yourself and see what you think. I'm curious to see what the next release from this is going to be. One of the ones that I really hope they release though would be the 50/50 Nelson Sauvin Enigma. I would love to see them do that nice kind of Pacific one actually. I'd love to see them do more of these with the New Zealand hops, because most of them so far have been American hop orientated. It'd be cool to see them do some of these with the Styrian Wolf and stuff like that as well. I'd love to see them do a 100 Styrian Wolf. But yeah, these, as I say, this series always throws up some really interesting things, so I would always recommend that you guys try it if you are like an ingredient nerd like me. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This has been really quite interesting actually. So yeah, this was the 50/50 Citra Ekuanot, a New England IPA coming in at 6.5% ABV, and the pungency of this beer is what really makes it kind of stand out. A little bit more bitter, a little bit more kind of fruity and pungent I think compared to some of the other 50/50s, but it's been awesome to review this one for you, as it always is with OO Brewing. So yeah, let's leave it there. Thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from OO Brewing, and we will return to these guys very soon. Like I say, we've got the Scarlet Rye IPA to review, and you'll see that a little bit later in the month. But in the meantime, thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Slàinte, skål. Make sure you check out this one at the 50/50 Citra Ekuanot IPA coming in at 6.5% ABV from OO Brewing in Gothenburg on the west coast of Sweden. Slàinte, skål, cheers.